I didn't think I was the kind of person who could lose everything without anyone noticing. I used to believe that if something was truly wrong, it would announce itself in argument, a threat, a slammed door. Instead, it arrived quietly, disguised as a normal Tuesday, with bad coffee and an unread email that I didn't open soon enough. I'm writing this because people keep asking why I left without a goodbye. I didn't disappear. I just stopped being invited to exist. For most of my adult life, I worked at a mid-sized tech company big enough to have policies, small enough that everyone knew when you microwaved fish. I wasn't important. I wasn't invisible either. I was reliable, which is another way of saying I was easy to overlook until something went wrong. I handled internal operations, budgets, vendor contracts, approvals that nobody wanted to read. The kind of work where mistakes don't make headlines but do get noticed by exactly the wrong person. For years, it was fine, boring, predictable. I liked that. My manager left suddenly, and that's where things began to tilt. The company didn't announce why. They never do. We were told there would be an interim lead for now. That person was someone I'd worked next to for 3 years. We'll call him R. Was charismatic in a restrained way. Not loud, not charming, just calm enough that people assumed competence. He smiled when you spoke, nodded like he was already agreeing, and made you feel slightly foolish for needing reassurance. At first, nothing changed. Then small things did. He asked me to rerun reports I'd already finalized. He questioned approvals that had never been questioned before. He'd CC someone new on emails, legal, finance, sometimes HR, for no obvious reason. When I asked if there was an issue, he said, "Just tightening processes." It sounded reasonable. Everything does, when it's wrapped in process. The first real red flag was a meeting I wasn't invited to. I found out because someone forwarded me notes afterward, assuming I'd been there. The notes referenced decisions I was supposedly responsible for implementing, decisions I hadn't agreed to. I went to R's office. He was on a call. I waited. When he hung up, he looked mildly annoyed, like I'd interrupted something more important. "I wasn't in that meeting," I said. "Oh," he replied. "Right, we figured you were swamped." I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. After that, the pressure increased. Deadlines shortened. Expectations shifted without warning. I started using phrases like "concerns have been raised," without saying by whom. He stopped putting things in writing. One afternoon, he asked me to approve a vendor payment that didn't match the contract terms. The discrepancy wasn't massive, but it was clear. "I can't sign off on this," I said. He leaned back in his chair. "It's already been agreed to." "By who?" He paused. "Let's not get stuck on details." That was the first time I refused him outright. To clarify, I wasn't trying to be difficult. Approvals like that carry personal liability. It wasn't optional for me. After that refusal, things cooled. Too much. R stopped including me in planning entirely. He reassigned parts of my role temporarily. When I asked HR if my position was changing, they told me no one had submitted anything formally. I started documenting everything. Dates, emails, verbal requests. I felt paranoid doing it, but something in my gut told me I needed a record. The escalation came disguised as concern. R asked me to step into a conference room with HR present. No warning, no agenda. HR smiled in a way that made my stomach drop. They asked if I was feeling overwhelmed. No, I said. They asked if I'd been struggling with deadlines. No, they asked if I felt supported. I said yes, because I didn't know what else to say. R sat quietly, hands folded, watching me like a case study. At the end, HR suggested I take a few days off, just to reset. I declined. That's when R finally looked at me and said, "We're just trying to help you before things get more complicated." I went home that night and didn't sleep. 2 weeks later, I received a calendar invite titled Performance Alignment. HR and R again. This time, there was a document, a formal performance improvement plan. The examples cited were surreal. Missed deadlines that didn't exist, decisions delayed because of my lack of responsiveness, Approvals I'd supposedly mishandled, approvals I'd never been asked to make. I pulled out my documentation. I showed emails, timestamps, contract terms. HR nodded sympathetically. R looked bored. We're not debating facts, HR said. We're looking at patterns. That sentence still echoes in my head. Update? Yes. I consulted an employment lawyer after this. They told me what I already suspected: prove retaliation, or prepare to leave. The climax came by accident. I was cleaning out my inbox late one evening when I found an email thread I wasn't meant to see. It had been forwarded to me by mistake, buried under a subject line so generic I'd skipped it before. It was between R and a vendor, the same vendor with the mismatched payment. The thread was long, detailed, and unmistakable. R had approved the altered terms months earlier, bypassing internal controls. He'd promised expedited payment. In exchange, there were consulting opportunities discussed vaguely but frequently. Nothing explicit, nothing illegal on its face, just enough to stink, and my name appeared in the thread, not as an approver, but as a fallback. If this gets flagged, operations will sign off. R had written. I realized then what had been happening. The pressure, the undocumented requests, the attempt to get me to approve something off record. When I refused, I stopped being useful. I forwarded the thread to my personal email and sat there staring at the screen. I had a choice: escalate it formally and become radioactive, or stay quiet and let the process finish crushing me. I chose neither. The next morning, I sent the thread anonymously to internal audit and resigned the same day. No accusations, no explanation, just a 2-week notice I knew they wouldn't accept. They didn't. Security walked me out within an hour. HR avoided eye contact, or didn't come to say goodbye. Update. Internal audit did investigate. I know because they contacted me weeks later. I cooperated fully. The resolution unsatisfying. R didn't go to jail. The company didn't issue a statement. There was a quiet restructuring. A vendor contract terminated by mutual agreement. R moved to a different department. Title changed. No announcement. I was unemployed for 4 months. Friends asked why I didn't fight harder, why I didn't win. They meant well. They didn't understand that winning would have required staying long enough to be destroyed in a more official way. I found another job eventually, smaller, less impressive. No one knows this story there. I keep my head down. I document everything. Sometimes I wonder if R thinks about me at all, or if I was just a minor obstacle. Clear. The strangest part isn't what they did. It's how easy it was to make it look like I did nothing wrong and still remove me completely. If you're waiting for proof before you act, remember this: by the time it arrives, you're already the problem.